The motion is adopted.
A major hurdle cleared for Intel to continue its expansion in Ohio. The House passed the CHIPS and Science Act, ensuring semiconductor companies in the U.S. with more than $50 billion in incentives. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here for Face the State. I'm TRACY Townsend. It's big news for the state and holds significant potential for Central Ohio. 10 TV's Kevin Landers has some specifics after a one-on-one interview with Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted.
Intel's expansion on this 1,000-acre piece of land is seen as a historic development for the entire state of Ohio and a disruptor of lives for those who live near it. I went one-on-one with Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted to talk about this project and what some believe is a lack of transparency about how this project was done. Intel has promised Ohio 2 fabrication plants on the soil of this western Licking County property, but passage of the $52 billion CHIPS and Science Act could invite a whole lot more.
They've given us every reassurance that if the CHIP Act passes, they will build as fast as they can.
What does that mean? Instead of 1 phase, the Lieutenant Governor said money from the CHIPS Act will pay for 4 more phases, which includes a packaging plant.
There are no promises beyond phase 1 right now, but we've always been told by Intel all along that if the CHIP Act passes, that would give them the capital to be able to build out further beyond just phase 1. We fully expect them to do that, although there's been no announcement on that at this point.
Intel says the site can accommodate 8 fabrication plants. To get here, Ohio showered the company with $2 billion of tax incentives.
Did the incentives stop here, or are there more incentives down the road as they continue to expand, if that happens?
I expect that like everything that we do, if there are more jobs and Intel is going to do more, then there will be more incentives to support that growth, particularly in areas like the infrastructure, because we're going to need to build more roads, we're going to need to build more water capacity, all of those kinds of things that will support that growth.
The deal to lure Intel to Ohio was largely done without public comment. Lieutenant Governor Husted says those seeking documents about the deal should have them.
Everything that we do will be made public. All that government is doing will be made public, or is public, and what Jobs Ohio will do also will be made public.
As for those displaced by the semiconductor plant, Husted says he's heard from those in support and against the project.
I know that there are some people that don't like this, and I know that there are a lot of people, though, who think very highly of it. You talk to some of the farmers whose land was worth $5,000 an acre, and now it's worth $50,000 an acre. They kind of like it.
Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
Hiring for work at Intel is already underway. We checked the company's website and found dozens of jobs posted for our area. Intel has promised 3,000 jobs as part of its $20 billion investment in Central Ohio. We are just 2 days away from Ohioans going to the polls. There's a primary election on Tuesday, August 2nd. You may have questions. We talked with the Franklin County Board of Elections for the answers. The team has some advice on what you should know before you go.
You know, every election is important. This is a primary. This isn't a general election. They are picking candidates for the House and the Senate, depending on the party affiliation, as well as the state central committee races. And again, they're important. And we would encourage. Certainly, we hope more people are going to come out to vote.
And don't forget that you can check the Secretary of State's website for specifics on what you need. And again, primary election day, Tuesday, August 2nd. Right now, parents and students are getting ready for another school year. Over the summer, Governor Mike DeWine signed a bill allowing teachers to carry firearms in the classroom. House Bill 99 requires school employees to have 24 hours of initial training and 8 hours of pre-qualification training annually, as well as active shooter and de-escalation training. The bill passed shortly after 19 children and 2 teachers were killed in that Texas elementary school shooting. You are now looking at images of school shootings that span more than 2 decades. Columbine, Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, the latest in Uvalde, Texas. All just heartbreaking images and moments after deadly school shootings. Now you're about to hear from the man who calls himself a former school shooter from Willoughby, Ohio. And we do want to reassure you that we are not simply providing a platform to glorify these kinds of incidents. Instead, this Ohio man tells 10 Investigates the lessons he learned from his own shooting could help prevent the next one. Chief Investigative Reporter Bennett Haverly with that story.
More than 14 years have passed since this headline first appeared, since this image showed armed officers with guns trained on a 15-year-old. All that time, more than 5,000 days have given Jeff Javnikar plenty of time to reflect on what he did.
I hurt thousands of people just by doing that. I mean, I scared all those kids in the school that day. Their parents were worried for them. I mean, parents of friends, and it's like a ripple effect.
The Jeff Javnikar you see now tells me he's far removed from the 15-year-old pictured here, who he says was bullied, overweight, and depressed. Far removed from the Jeff seen in the back row of this photo, taken inside a juvenile detention facility where he was incarcerated for nearly 18 months. Time he earned because of what he did. When
I was there and I shot the first shot, it's almost like it made me realize that it was really happening, and it wasn't just all an idea in my head anymore. And it scared me. And
it scared you?
Yeah. But I know I was scaring hundreds of other kids, but what I'm trying to say is it almost kicked me back into reality out of that fantasy or delusional mindset I had, and it just hit me that I was really doing what I was thinking about doing.
At that moment, you realized you were a school shooter?
Yep.
This file news footage shows an oddly familiar scene in America. The looks of concern on the faces of parents and students. What you don't see is Jeff, who was eventually let out to authorities by 2 administrators. Inside Willoughby, Ohio's South High School, Jeff described what unfolded. 2 shots. One hit the ceiling, the other a trophy case.
It happened so fast. I turned a corner as soon as I shot that first shot, and I met somebody face to face, another student, and he was like mid-walk, and he stopped. It was because I just shot the shot, turned the corner, and I saw his eyes. I remember, I'll never forget that. He looked at me like, oh my God, just out of shock. And I told him that I'm not going to hurt you, I'm not going to hurt anybody. And I was almost like crying, I was trembling, and he ran.
No one was hurt, but Jeff had been hurting and spent weeks planning to kill himself, but do it in what he called a bigger way.
So for me, it was more so about releasing a message or letting people know how I really felt inside, not to bully kids, not to mess around with kids. So it was more about just letting people know that message, but obviously I did it in the wrong way.
So almost in the way of the sense of like you wanted people to understand the hurt you were enduring.
Yeah.
Even if that meant hurting others.
Yeah, and another thing I wanted to make clear too is before the day that it happened, I probably had some ideas of hurting certain individuals, possibly, people that picked on me growing up. But the day that it happened, I actually, and I can say this knowing it's 100% true to myself, I did not have any thoughts of hurting anybody that day while I was doing it.
Jeff credits 2 school administrators with saving his life. They convinced him to put the gun down away from his own head. During his time incarcerated, Jeff says he finished high school, got counseling, thought about his feelings and his actions, and his previous fascination with school shootings. In the months leading up to his incident, Columbine had become a focus of his internet searches.
So I think the sensationalism of how much media attention they get did play a role in me wanting to do something similar in that way.
Yeah. Is there a sense of irony now? Because we're giving media attention to what happened with you?
Yeah, but I hope this is different. I mean, I hope I can share a message or share something that will help somebody or something.
Jeff's experience differs greatly from other similar shootings in that no one was hurt or killed. But 10 Investigates found similarities between Jeff's story and what FBI research has shown. In this 2018 report, the FBI analyzed more than 60 active shooter cases and found nearly half had suicidal ideation. The shooters also showed warning signs and concerning behaviors that those close to them may have seen but failed to act on. In many instances, the FBI wrote, the concern stayed between the person who noticed the behavior and the active shooter. Early recognition, the FBI says, of these incidents may represent critical opportunities for detection and disruption. Jeff said his mother knew something was wrong, but others around him missed the warning signs.
Yeah, I'd say I should probably bring a gun to school, and it was almost like me trying to tell them in a way. And I remember one friend even the week before, for like 2 days in a row, he saw me in the hallways. He goes, "You bring the gun to school?" Like joking around. So yeah, there were definitely warning signs. If somebody's talking like that, I think it should definitely be reported or told, regardless of if you're afraid, if they're just joking.
Yeah.
Because
when you were saying this to friends, were you hoping someone would say, "Hey, what are you talking about?"
it was almost like I was hoping deep down that it would lead to somebody stopping me, what I was planning on doing.
Each school shooting in America is jarring, but for Jeff and his family, it prompts a reliving of his tragedy averted. It is why, he says, he chose to share his story now, in hopes it will prevent the next one.
I just wanted to share my perspective that how terrible a thing it was that I did, the consequences I had to endure, how not worth it was, and how I wish I could have just talked to somebody instead.
Bennett Haberly, 10 Investigates.
And Jeff says, in his view, there is no binary solution to stopping shootings. He sees a need, he says, for both increased gun control and a focus on addressing mental health. 10 Investigates looked at 25 school shootings in Ohio dating back to 1970. Nearly half have occurred since the year 2000. Of all the shooters, only 3 had a previous diagnosis of mental illness. And the abortion debate is still top of mind for many people. We tackle some big questions about abortion in our state. Welcome back. Some new questions are coming out about how an Ohio law could impact the recent overturning of Roe v. Wade. Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association held a free forum on Monday to talk about Ohio's heartbeat bill. The forum included medical and legal experts on reproductive rights. Here were some of the big questions. First, how would prosecutors find out if you've had an abortion? Here's what Jen Driscoll, assistant prosecuting attorney from Cuyahoga, said.
The Department of Health could be the entity to go in and ask if somebody were to, again, call in and say, I have a tip that Dr. Romanos is doing something, wrong and has performed this abortion.
Another question, could your cell phone data be used in an abortion case? The answer is yes. Those period tracking apps or calendar data can be used. Legal experts gave this advice.
It needs to be obtained properly, right? With probable cause, search warrants.
If you don't want someone to know about it, don't type it in your phone.
Finally, could prosecutors refusing to take on abortion cases be forced to prosecute? According to the panel, not likely because of prosecutors' discretionary powers. However, the Ohio Attorney General's office could step in. During the Ohio State Fair opening ceremony, Governor DeWine was asked about his stance on the 10-year-old Ohioan who needed to travel to Indiana for an abortion.
Look, I think what you're seeing now is a public discussion about what should happen when the legislature comes back after the election. I mean, they've made it clear to me they're not coming back until after the November election. You're seeing a discussion. It's a proper discussion. Every state, based upon this recent Supreme Court decision, has to make this decision and exactly what we want. So, when we sign the heartbeat bill, those of us who believe that One of the functions of government is to protect the unborn, the most vulnerable members of society, and that's been my position for over 40 years. Felt that and hoped that the Supreme Court would reach the decision that they did. But we didn't know that. So they did make that decision. Now it's back to the states. Now we're having a public debate. I would expect when the legislature comes back, not only will we have this public debate between now and when the legislature comes back, but we also will have hearings. And people will be able to come in. And we're going through a process that every state should go through, and that is deciding exactly what we want this law to say.
And just this week, Columbus City Council officially approved funding for reproductive rights. City Council member Elizabeth Brown sponsored a legislative package aimed at protecting abortion access. $1 million will be split between the Ohio Women's Alliance and the Abortion Fund of Ohio. Vaccinations have long been a part of the back-to-school planning process. COVID-19 and the rapid spreading subvariants really making vaccines especially critical, as you know. Well, this week, there's an opportunity for families from a healthcare provider where experts focus on what they describe as whole person healthcare. Boundless Health, which is the state's first healthcare center of its kind, will offer free COVID vaccines to the general public. The Pfizer vaccine is going to be offered and administered to all ages on certain vaccination dates at the Boundless Health office in Worthington. You must make an appointment. Your information will be put in a state database, and then you could be asked for your insurance information, but you are not going to be charged. Children 6 months to 4 years old will receive 3 separate appointments. The second dose will be at least 21 days after that first dose, and then the third dose is at least 8 weeks after the second dose. It's important to remember that these kids can only get the vaccine at clinics and doctors' offices. Children ages 5 to 11 and people who are 12 years old and up will receive 2 separate appointments at least 21 days apart.
They just need to know that we vaccinate anybody from 6 months up. And you do not have to have developmental disabilities. We treat anyone. We are going to be hosting the vaccine clinics every Wednesday for the entire month of August from 8 to 4:30.
All right. On your screen are some of the dates your family can get vaccinated and boosted. The clinic starts Wednesday, August 3rd. You can find this complete list, the information at 10tv.com. And the Ohio State Fair is well underway, leaving some with questions, though, about safety. We're talking with experts when it comes to rides and even gun safety at this year's event. The Ohio State Fair is back in action, including some new safety measures. Ride inspections are different this year because of Tyler's Law. 10TV's Ashley Bornanson stopped by the fairgrounds to check on the process.
The Ohio State Fair is back, and there's nothing better than the thrill of one of their high tower rides and coasters. But the Ohio Department of Agriculture says the #1 priority is safety.
So Tyler's Law really raises the level of standard for amusement ride safety here in the state of Ohio.
Tyler's Law went into effect in 2019, just 2 years after Tyler Jarrell died when the ride he was riding came apart. An investigation later found the ride was rusted. His mother spoke with 10TV in May as the fair season started. She said,
there were a lot of very dedicated people to making sure that we were going forward as best as we could to ensure that this didn't happen again.
The law has requirements specifically aimed at preventing anyone being allowed onto a ride with the same kind of wear and tear.
It requires them to work with a manufacturer or a third-party engineer to figure out mitigation strategies for that fatigue and corrosion, which really raises the level of safety up for that ride.
David Miram is tasked with overseeing the inspections. His team is looking closely at each ride, but the requirements vary. Kiddie rides like carousels and go-karts will have at least one state inspector once annually. For the coasters, it's at least double. But ODA says state inspectors typically come out about 7 to 9 times.
No red flags this year, just business as usual. We had almost 75% of our staff here over the weekend performing these inspections, making sure that they're top-notch.
At over 20 feet high, at least 2 state inspectors will be inspecting the Ring of Fire twice annually. In addition, the Tally Amusements team will also be inspecting every ride daily to make sure everyone's safe.
We have a management to each ride that is assigned to that ride for the whole spot.
Just one of the many safety checks happening to keep your family safe. In Columbus, Ashley Bornanson, 10 TV News.
The Ohio State Fair runs through August 7th. Tickets are $10 for anyone who's 13 and up. It's $8 for seniors, and children under 5 are free. And while you may be looking forward to having fun with family or friends, we did get a lot of messages about safety, especially as it relates to permitless carry in our state. Ohio now allows open carry for firearms. 10 TV's Lacey Crisp is at the fairgrounds with what you need to know before you go.
You're going to see state troopers everywhere. So this fair, there's going to be a large amount of troopers.
Whether you see them or not, they will be watching you.
You're going to see numerous cameras. And we are monitoring those cameras so that we can ensure that, if something bad is about to happen, maybe we can catch that on camera ahead of time and prevent that from occurring.
Lieutenant Nathan Dennis with the Ohio State Highway Patrol says troopers will be keeping a close eye to make sure you and your family stay safe. He says even though the state law says you can bring your firearm in, he suggests you leave it at home.
So what does that mean for people who want to bring their guns?
So when it comes to bringing a weapon into the fairgrounds, if somebody does choose to bring one into the fairgrounds, you cannot have a weapon inside of any of the buildings. You also cannot have a weapon inside of any of the liquor permitted establishments that are on the grounds.
Signs will be posted all over the grounds on where firearms are not permitted.
So it's recommended that you don't bring one with you or that you leave it secured in your vehicle and not bring it onto the grounds.
10 TV's Lacey Crisp reporting. Lieutenant Dennis wanted to remind people that if you see something, say something. He says he just wants to make sure everyone who comes to the fair has a great and safe time. Before you head to the fair, text the word FAIR to 614-460-3345. We'll send you a link. It'll have everything you need to know, including where to park and ride hours. During the state fair opening event, Governor Mike DeWine pushed for state lawmakers to pass stricter distracted driving laws, saying we have to put the phones down on the road.
There will be people die in Ohio this week because of distracted driving who would not have died if we had a distracted driving law in effect. We can almost guarantee that. Talk to any Ohio State trooper, look at the data that they have, and distracted driving is clearly underreported. People just don't volunteer. Gee, I was doing whatever I was doing and not paying any attention. That's kind of the last thing they want to admit. So distracted driving is underreported, but we know it kills a lot of people. So I'm making this plea again to the state legislature. Give us a vote, put it up. I think when it comes to a vote, it will pass, and I think it will pass and become law, and I cannot wait to sign it.
The push to end distracted driving is a cause that is very important to 10 TV. Dom Taberi, as you know, started Maria's Message in honor of his late daughter, Maria, who died in a crash. Maria's Message is hosting free safe driving days. It's time for teens to learn how to be completely aware and under control behind the wheel. Students will go through 3 drills focusing on wet pavement, braking, emergency lane changes, and what to do in a skid. Registration for the August 13th event is now open. Head to 10tv.com/Maria's Message to sign up. We certainly thank you for joining us on this Sunday morning, and we wish you a great week.